about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
To infinity and beyond!
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking, don't they?
It's classified.
You talking to me?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
I can't fly!
Expecto Patronum!
Entertainment X.
You never know what you're gonna get.
Welcome back to another episode of Entertainment X. I get to sit down with Luis Salgado in the Revolucion Latina offices in Times Square to talk about life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, him growing up in Puerto Rico, his choreography endeavors, working on different projects in his life, traveling the world, and really his views on happiness and living a full life. So, I hope you enjoy this episode and keep on keeping on. We are back, and today with me is Luis Salgado.
Wepa.
I love saying your last name.
Thank
I
you.
love it. Is there, well, no, I'm not even going to ask that. Let's start with our first question here. This is how the interview is going to go today.
I love it.
So right from the beginning, we're going to go back to the beginning of time for Luis Salgado.
Salgado.
What did you love about growing up in Puerto Rico?
Growing up in Puerto Rico. I have to, let me see. It's more the family, the rascally ideas. The other day I saw my son jumping from his bed or from the sofa, and I always remember, oh my God, I used to jump from my house. I used to jump from the roof of my house to the grass. And actually one day I wasn't even trying to do that. One day I was playing like WWF wrestling with my cousins, and they happened to be in the grass, and I was in the roof, and I was like, and he jumps from the third row. And I like do the gesture to jump, and I actually jumped. And that was the day that I saw myself in the floor, and I rolled, and I became up like Hulk Hogan. Oh, and he makes it out of the third row. And so like I think the rascally family rawness that I grew up with, that I would go on Sunday, quote unquote, to the church retreatment, and all of a sudden I just escaped with 12 other guys to the river, and that we spent 2 hours there, and where are you guys? My grandmother was shouting. Like that rascally family rawness that I grew up with gave me, I think, a lot of who I am today, a lot of both the exciting parts of me, the very cautious parts of me, and the freedom that I think I strive for every day.
Was it always like a party at home?
It wasn't. There were really hard times too. But there is a sense of openness. There's a sense of I don't know. I guess the people that live, I don't know, in the middle of the United States might feel that way with, I don't know, in Oklahoma, that the space is big. Yeah. And for me, although, I grew up with kind of a poor family and whatnot, I still had like the sun and the rain and the ocean was near my house, so I was free. I had so much.
Okay, so what was the balance then between like work ethics and the rascaliness?
Yeah, well, the work ethic, it's funny because I think 2 different reasons. One, you see the examples around you, like my mom, again, because of the situation that she was a divorced mother and she had me and she had to take care of her family basically alone. You see the example of discipline. And although when I say rascally, it might sound like, but rascally is just being a child and living life. And then my mom was an example. My father was an example. My father was in the army. Eventually he was a professor. He was a principal in a school. So I saw the people that I come from kind of make the path for them and for myself. So they were disciplined. And then I had a wonderful, wonderful dance and theater teacher that became my mentor for many years. Actually, this morning I texted him and I said, thank you. And he was like, are you okay? Is everything okay? I was like, yeah, why do you always think something's bad when I say thank you? No, I'm happy and I'm just grateful because he gave me discipline. Yeah. And long story short, I was 15 when I was still a rascal. And when he will punish me and be like, you're not doing this number because you weren't disciplined enough. And at the same time, I was the guy he will leave in charge. And the first time that I was in charge of this folkloric ballet that we all founded, another teacher, him and me, my friends weren't respecting me. And all of a sudden I was in this community center trying to run a rehearsal at age 15, and they're looking at me like, who are you to tell us to be disciplined? And I immediately learned that the only way that I was going to get respect was leading by example. So the next rehearsal on, I was the most disciplined kid. I had to.
And that just came naturally. I mean, that was out of necessity.
Very, very, very naturally. And again, it wasn't like I was crazy, right? It wasn't like I was like, when I use the word rascal, you might look at one of these Home Alone movies, and that's not what I mean. Yeah.
Because we were talking right before we started recording about To Be or Not to Be.
Mm-hmm.
And those kids, their discipline
Yes.
is so, it was just so great. And to see the way you would speak about the piece and to the audience and the way you would speak to them, it was so like, this now 45 seconds go, but it was still playful.
As much as I regret the army in my father, I do think that there's a gigantic sense of discipline that I respected seeing him be the man that he was. And that translated to me in the arts with a very specific method called the Suzuki technique that comes from Japan, and it's very rigid and it's very discipline based and it's very confrontational to the conflict of the character through your body. And so that's one of the big things that I use these days as a director and as a choreographer. And people have to be physically, emotionally, and mentally ready for that. And I think part of what you're seeing in that discipline comes from that background of Suzuki method,
Yeah. Was there anything your father taught you in particular about discipline, or anything that you learned?
I think I learned discipline more from my teacher and my mom. Not because my father didn't give me discipline because of the army. Again, I had a love and hate relationship with the army through my father and what it represented. So I think I saw more discipline in the example of people around me. Again, my mom having $2 to make it through the week and making those $2 work. That was the kind of discipline that inspired me.
Yeah, and we're focusing on discipline a lot here,
which is great.
But and I've heard this.
Art is discipline in so many ways.
Discipline equals freedom, is what I've heard.
Yes,
and in a way, that's true.
Yeah,
you have to have a little bit of rigidity, to.
I often say to my students and my actors, like, we want freedom, and the minute we get it, we don't know what to do with it. And it's not only in the arts, but it's a resemble of our society as well. We're always fighting for freedom, but the minute we get it, we land into chaos. And we don't know how to control ourselves within the freedom we have. We need rules. We need discipline. We need guidelines. We need limitations. That's the only way we grow, I think.
I happen to agree with that. So why theater? What made you go into theater?
Why not?
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Why not theater?
So, okay. So then maybe part 2 to that would be, what do you love about storytelling?
Everything. So storytelling.
It's a big question.
Yeah, it's gigantic. Storytelling. I think I will have to start by saying the unheard voices. There's so many. Again, my mom's story. Like, I'm saying it right here, right off the bat. My teacher's story. Through who I am, I celebrate not only him but all the teachers whose names don't come out, but they formed us. My father and those guys in the army. Like, I already use so many stories in the 5 minutes we've been talking about, and I think when I look at arts and why theater, I look not only at, oh, amazing, look at that building, or who did the Time Warner building, or we're in Times Square, but I look at the lady who cleans this building here in Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, and like, we get to open the door and say hello to her, and we get to live in this space because she works here, and we might not know her name every day, but we know that we should be grateful to her. So through arts, I think from the very beginning, again, because of this teacher, I discovered that storytelling was a way to celebrate those unheard voices, or those names that don't always get celebrated, and part to be tangible in how and why. He didn't have a theater. So what he did was, let's do a show this week for the ladies who cook the meals in the lunchroom. And so there we were performing at the lunch at the cafeteria for these ladies doing poetry and music saying thank you, or Spanish thing. Let's celebrate all the Spanish teachers in the school in Hispanic Heritage Month or whatever. Yeah. Like there were very little individual moments that our art wasn't just about our art. It was about the way that we I want to cry. It was about the way we celebrated the people around us and the people that did so much for us and that perhaps we never said thank you. Yeah. And so art in me became, this storytelling is not just a storytelling, it's a way of community, so.
And that's so beautiful because I think storytelling can help a lot of people, especially when you have an audience member sit down and they don't expect to hear the story they hear.
Right.
And then they learn a lesson.
Right.
What do you think theater can teach an average audience member?
That's a very hard question.
I'm going to ask you a bunch of them. So
yeah. I love hard questions. I love to think, so thank you. Yeah. It's a hard question because there's an intellectual answer and then there's a spiritual answer. I think the intellectual answer would be we're not here to teach. We do theater because we want to provoke you but not teach you. You'll find your own answers. I think that's how I
find your own answers. I love that.
Yeah.
That's good.
I try to approach my directing work that way. I'm going to provoke you. I'm going to provoke you as hard as I can. Can I curse here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The other day, an actor was making fun of me. It's like, I was like, great. And then we give them blue balls. And he's like, Luis, you love a good blue balls. And I was like, that's kind of my job. My job is to give you blue balls. And if you exit the theater with that feeling, then you want to do something about it. And so that I think will be my intellectual approach to how I want to work with theater. Then the spiritual approach is, of course, we're here to educate. And I just don't know what I'm educating you at because it, again, depends on what you take from what I'm giving you or what you're willing to take from what I'm trying to put in this plate. Rap time, for example. I had people walked out of the show and they weren't ready to talk about race and they weren't ready to talk about the politics that's around us today, or they weren't ready to hear the word N-word 20 times in a row, and it affected them in a different way, perhaps because they've used it in their past. And so that's what they will take from it. It's the confrontation with themselves from that versus somebody else that it's like, oh my God, thank you for I needed that. I needed to see that someone cares for this story and for how we've been pushed aside so many times and abused with just language, and so the spiritual side of me says, yeah, of course, I'm educating somehow, but it's not my job to finalize the definition of how,
I do. And I like that comment about it's funny. I like that comment about the blue balls. I was doing a production of Parade last year, and the director did not allow the audience through his direction to clap until the end of Act 1.
The ultimate blue balls.
Yeah, when they say he's guilty. And they've come to like him, and then he's wrongfully, in the story, the way the story's told, he's wrongfully guilty, and then that's the only thing they're allowed to clap at. And it's such an interesting, it gets people, half the audience left, and we're ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And there was a part 2 to that you just brought up about spirituality. Okay. Do you have a particular story that comes to mind after a production you were in, or directed, or was a part of, where someone came up to you and had a conversation with you about what they learned? Either spiritually, like they really loved it, it moved them, they're like, yes. Or someone who was like, turned off by it, but still approached you to talk about it.
As a performer or as a creative?
Well, we could do both if you have one of each that you're willing to share.
Yeah. So I think yes, so many. And I wasn't actually thinking about this as I was thinking which one I will choose. So randomly, Peru comes to mind. I went to Peru and I got assigned this new project, and I studied in 2 weeks as much as you could study an entire culture of hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I try to choose my battles wisely. I went to the Amazons. I met with really rich people, with really poor people. I went to, the Afro-Peruvian area called Chincha, which I fell madly in love with. Like, I allowed myself as a human being to be touched by as much as I could in 2 weeks. And then I came here to New York, and I wrote in the next 2 weeks a show for them. And, in that I questioned so much because, again, what stories are we telling, right? I could tell the story from the perspective of that lady who I was in her house and had the $1 million swimming pool and gave me like 10 books to read or the whole thing. And it's amazing. Thank you for your support. Or I could allow myself to be totally affected by these people in Chincha who 4 years ago, at the time that I went there, had an earthquake 4 years before I went there, and they still didn't have windows or doors in their houses. And so you see these realities, and you're like, oh my goodness, what is the story I'm supposed to be telling? And so I did something very weird, as I probably usually do, and I took the national anthem of Peru, and I took a liberty, and I gave it a very dark spin. And so I was, this was like 20 minutes into the show. All of a sudden, there's something called catatumbas. The catatumbas are it's like these puzzles, these things inside where they hide the slaves or they punish the slaves, and they put the iron, on them, and they were there for a few days, and they're really low sync, and so they're hunching, and that's why they dance like that, because they learn to dance in this very limited space, and so 25 minutes into the show, I am doing this big flamenco number that has a little bit of the influence of the Spaniards, energy and influence in the Peruvian culture, and all of a sudden you have this very small, literally a stare, literally like I'm trying to do a physical gesture here that explains it, but like a short little stare, and from that little stare I created a hole inside the stairs, and from that hole inside the stairs 16 dancers come down off, and there's a big backlight blanking the audience from this perspective. Well, these shadows of black bodies are coming out, and then the anthem is playing in the lower keys possible, as if it was death. And the subliminal message there, for those who knew the anthem, was that the first lyrics of the anthems that weren't sung say, "We are free, let's be free." And these people were slaved. And so, like, stuff like that, I was like daring to try it and explore artistically. And then an audience member comes to you and says, "Oh my God, I never thought of the irony of my own anthem until I saw that physical moment you just created." And you're like, "Okay, I quit. I can die today." Yeah.
I've served my purpose.
I served my purpose.
Yeah.
And so a moment like that becomes so powerful in someone's career. And again, I might not have my own Tony Award yet, but I have the outcome of that individual who said, "Oh shit, my anthem is not good enough." Yeah. And so that's just as rewarding,
Yeah. I'm like, there's so many questions I have from that alone. You do a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
You teach around the world.
Mm-hmm.
You consider yourself an educator?
I think so.
At
Unfortunately, yeah, it's weird to say it, but an educated, I don't know, define educator for me.
Someone who teaches someone something they didn't know.
Yeah, sure. The thing is that we all know it.
But yeah.
It's just we don't see it.
Yeah.
So I am more than someone who teaches someone something that they didn't know. I try to take the vessel or the ¿cómo se dice? The fabric, the mask,
veil.
or the veil, that's the word, the veil out of our faces so we
Yeah.
can see what's in front of us.
Where does that come from for you? Is that just cultivated over time? Like you just
Probably.
perform? You're like, yeah, whatever.
I really
Of
don't
course,
know.
yeah.
I really don't know. Like, it's a collection of a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with too much stuff to cover in an hour.
We can do another one.
Yeah, we should. Okay, there's a question I missed earlier when we were talking about family, parents.
Mhm.
What did you learn about kindness growing up?
Wow. Okay, I just give you an example right away, and I've said this publicly before. Back to my mom.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's not the goal.
Burger King, I'm probably like 11 years old, and my mom has like $5 in the purse, and I want a loncherita. It's a kids meal, and I remember as if it was now that the kids meal had inflated crayon. It came in like
yeah. The gooey kind of
crayon
balloon thing that you blow up. Yes,
yeah,
I know
it
what
was
you mean.
like a car Happy Meal with in the background it was like a Cadillac, and that was the crayon, and so you will take the crayon and blow it away, and my mom bought me the thing with the $5 she had, and then another mother came in with her son in her hand, and said, "Hey, how much is that? How much is that Happy Meal?" And my mom, I don't know, said like $3.49, whatever it is, and I don't remember. And the lady said to her daughter, "Papi, I cannot buy it for you." And my mom looked at me like, you see, not everybody gets the opportunity. You just had to buy this meal. Come on. And we went to them and bought them the Happy Meal with whatever she had left in her purse. And so that is kindness in a nutshell. And so my mom, thank you, Mom, has been a great example to that.
Yeah. Wow. And that shows. It shows in the work.
Thank you.
And I've only seen. Well, no, I've seen a few things you've done. The most recent thing, though, which is through Revolucion Latina, which we'll talk about at the end here. You could see that kindness, and that cliche as it may be, is what the world needs more of.
Thank you.
But you don't give it. You're not giving, at least to what I'm seeing. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're not giving the fluffy, lovey kindness. You're giving the hard truth kindness, the kindness that counts.
What is that?
What is that? Oh, now I'm being put on the spot here. It's the way those kids were performing, and the way they were loving each other. In those scenes and sonnets and whatnot. It wasn't just like sparkles and sequins and bright lights and happy time music with smiles. It was sad, but meaningful.
No.
You're gonna make meat. I guess it's only fair. But it's that meaningful kind of kindness. Kindness isn't always pretty.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
And you're incredible at portraying that. So thank you. That's
you.
a thank you. The whole reason I said that was a thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting, too, because, again, the same way that 50% of those students, as we were talking before the interview, don't necessarily speak English, the same way that they don't get the same opportunities in life. And so there's something about putting those two worlds together, right? New York, we get so spoiled, myself included. We live here. You come out and there are how many shows on Broadway for you to see. There's how many schools for you to take. You go to one space like Broadway Dance Center, and how many classes can you take between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m.? That's the reason why I moved here. And those kids in Argentina, in Colombia, in Peru, in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, in Santo Domingo, they don't have that. Like before I came here, you have to wait until Wednesday at 6 p.m. to take the one class you can take. And so it's when you put those realities together and they listen to each other, there's incredible change that takes place. There's incredible kindness that becomes potential,
And I've mentioned this a lot, so the listeners have heard me say this a lot. I took a trip to the Philippines 2 years ago, and for the first time I realized that turning the light switch on and having lights come on is not expected always there in every location.
Yeah.
Same with the water, turning on the sink and having fresh drinking water come out of the faucet. Those little things, it's like, how can you have a bad day when you really finally realize how lucky you are to have what you have?
And I think the funny argument to your story is that you say the Philippines, right? Which means miles away from where we are here in New York City today.
Yeah.
Versus
12 time zones.
Versus just very nearby. Just the last year or the last 8 months with the hurricane in Puerto Rico. And people, again, realize for the first time after years and years of luxury what it is to not have light or water. Or you go to Cuba, and the stories, I just went to Cuba for the first time like a year and a half ago or a year ago, I don't remember. And the stories of what a simple supermarket plastic bag means to them because they don't get them as often as we do. As we have piles collected in our house. You know, you go to Santo Domingo and the light can go at any given point. The first mango I ever ate in Santo Domingo, I was like 17 years old. I was touring with an artist, and I remember that the girl was like, I gotta cook this for you so quick because I don't want the light to go. And boom, word said, and the light left. There was no light. And so, you know, you don't.
And that's my own ignorance. Like, and I've heard about this and I've read about it, you know, with Puerto Rico and the hurricane and everything. But it's my own, and collectively, people who do not see this ever or get to experience it, it's their own ignorance where they don't realize, oh wow, how lucky am I to already have.
And that's okay. Ignorance in the simple face of not knowing, not being ignorant, which is choosing not to see it, right? And in that idea, no one is to blame. I don't. This is why I want to clarify the meaning of ignorance in my head, because the problem is those who don't want to see it, right? Not knowing it for real is ignorance, but that's fine. You don't know it. You were born with light and water and the food you need and clean clothes. Amen. Good for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and suffer. Why would you? Yeah. But it's seeing that potential and turning your head and not caring. That's the worst ignorance. And, you know, I don't want to get political, but that's part of what's happening in our governments today. They've seen that. They don't care. So that's different.
Yeah.
That's dangerous.
That's an actual problem.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be political.
No. I'm thinking about this word gratitude, graciousness. And I'm trying to craft a question for you on that. I mean, we pretty much see your views on gratitude. I was going to ask you what your views are on gratitude. I don't know if you had anything else that comes to mind when I say that question, or if we covered.
Gratitude is such a beautiful, beautiful word. Like you see that bonnet that's by your side right now, full of colors. When I think of gratitude, I think of something like that. You know, it's full with different possibilities, capacities, colors, shapes. You know, gratitude is. I love it. You guys are not seeing this, but everybody's looking at a hat right now.
Literally a bonnet.
Yeah, literally a bonnet. And I feel gratitude is like that, and I wish I could be more grateful. I try my best, you know, but I think it's never enough. There's so many things to be grateful for.
Is it a daily practice for you?
I try. I can show you my text messages. It's like sad because I'm always like, thank you. Thank you so much.
Lots of that.
I'm trying to be better at it again. I think that when I moved to New York, I remember, you know, communicating a lot with people that I was always very grateful for, the people that I knew that I'm here in many ways because at some point they believed in me or supported me or even didn't believe in me and challenged me to grow by not believing. And I think at some point we get so busy that we might sacrifice gratitude, you know, and I am trying to exercise it even more because I know how important it is.
I agree. It's very important.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to change gears a little bit here. I'm curious about how you find the balance between achievement and fulfillment.
Are they different?
I think so, because you can achieve a lot and not be fulfilled by what you're achieving.
That's when you allowed yourself to do things that maybe you're not always happy with for the sake of achieving something.
I love the way you're taking these questions. I do. No, I really do. Yes.
Maybe,
exactly.
Right? When who was it, Don Quixote? Who said something like, en nuestras locas aventuras renunciamos a lo que queremos ser por aquello, renunciamos a lo que somos por aquello que queremos ser. In our crazy adventures, we give up on the things that we are for those things we want to be. And that's maybe.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, in our crazy adventures in life, I'm misquoting Don Quixote right now, Miguel de Cervantes. In our crazy adventures in life, we give up what we are for those things we want to be.
Yes,
and
I've heard that before. Yeah.
And I think that achievements and fulfillment. I don't want to sound like, oh my God, but they go hand in hand for me because I moved to New York and I made a promise, and I'm aware of how blessed I am that I have been able to keep that promise to myself, which was I'm only going to do what I love. So my fulfillment and my achievements are going hand to hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's a good answer. What?
Sorry.
Okay. What for what?
Just because I don't want it to sound like cocky, but it's
No.
like, it's hard.
Okay, so here's another question
Yeah.
for you. Cocky and confidence.
Okay.
You have the confidence to say, I'm not going to do anything I
Yeah,
don't.
those are different.
They are, but it could be, sometimes can be a fine line
Yeah.
or not.
It's a fine, fine line. Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
You live and you learn, right? And and there are things that I think we must become confident with, which is not to say I'm gonna shuffle it in your face, which becomes cocky, right? And again, I think it's because of my own commitment to my dream that I don't want to sacrifice who I am. What I am is I love art, I love life. I come from a humble family, and I want to honor that. And as long as I am honoring that as I work for my achievements, I'm fulfilled. So it's hard for me to separate it, you know, versus when am I cocky? Well, when someone is trying to put a big mask in front of me and prove that they have big balls, and then you're like, wait, hold on a second. I can be as humble as I want, but I also have big balls, so don't fuck with me, right? And that's when you are cocky. That's a different thing than confident.
Yeah. How did you make the transition into social work? Or is theater social
Did
work
I ever
for you?
make
No. You see what I-
Did I ever?
Did you ever make the transition?
It's funny.
Because I was looking at your website and
Yeah.
it says social work, and I was
Yeah.
like, that's very interesting.
Yeah. My teacher, Jose Javier Rivera. Thank you. I love you, Pepito, wherever you are. I remember, just again, I think I can always answer something by examples. I remember probably it was like 15 or 16. I was in this period of when I was realizing I have to be more disciplined. And yet the rascally also helped me in things. I remember that he had a project in this town in Puerto Rico called Salinas, which was by the Olympic Stadium. And they gather a group of kids, you know, young people from my age, right between the 15s and the 18s, from all over the island, kids with problems. And again, who was I to be there as a teacher? And how could I ever demand respect from people that were even older than me? And I remember stepping into that room the first day and being like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I looked at them. I sat down, and I was like, okay, let's talk. What's your story? What do you love? What do you hate? And I just listened for like a good hour. That was my class the first day. And I listened for like a good hour. I took everything they gave to me, and I went to my room in that albergue, and I started creating a mix of music that will somehow open up and honor the story of every student that I had there on what they had just shared with me. And we ended up with this little potpourri of Man in the Mirror meets something else. It was like, I want to make it was like they all want to make a change. They don't know how. And we created the next day, my next class, I created a choreography based on the stories they told me through movement. And I guess that's when you realize, oh shoot, this is in a way social work. Yeah. I'm not just creating a choreography. I'm caring for the stories that they're giving me for their unheard voices, and figuring out a way to hybrid everything in a way that make a catharsis, if not for the audience, for them.
Yeah. What does helping someone in need do for you or do to you?
I don't know. I can answer that because I don't know that I'm always aware that I'm helping someone in need, right? Like, yes, when Puerto Rico had the hurricane, a lot of us realized we have to do something, and we don't know what something is. So what I did was land at the island and be, after figuring out how I could potentially help and who my main target was that I needed to help, which was mostly the artistic community, because they're my friends who are unemployed, without water, without light, and yet they're the first ones trying to give water to people in their houses. How do I help them? So I just got to go there and do something. Yeah. And it so happens that thing you end up doing, it's helping someone in need. But it's not like I don't like sitting down in this table, and you can ask anybody in the organization of Revolución Latina. That's not what we do. We don't sit down and say, how do we help people in need? We just say, how do we go out and do things? Mm-hmm. And as you're doing things, you realize you're helping people that needed something.
Yeah.
But it's just a weird thing. You know, it's a weird thing. Those people in Peru, in Chincha, that didn't have doors and windows, I never planned to go there and give them windows and doors. I just realized they don't have them. Let's do something.
Yeah. I read it on your website, and I wrote this down because I loved it. Your heart expands and lives in the souls of unheard voices,
Yes.
which is something we've been talking about
Yeah.
for a few minutes now. I just love that, and I want to say that.
Thank
I want
you.
to tell you
Thank
that I
you.
love that.
So many unheard
Yeah.
voices.
Can we talk about your first dance teacher some more?
Yeah. Jose Rivera.
Was that just one day you were like, we need an activity? No more jumping off the roof.
I back to the army. I went to Hawaii when I was 9. My father was in the army. My mom got sick, and she was like, "Go with your dad while I get better." And you know, at this point, my father must be so mad that I tell the story this way. But in reality, my dad was working. He couldn't be with me. He was busy.
Yeah.
And I spent basically a year in Hawaii doing whatever I wanted, you know, and with my stepmom. And it wasn't necessarily the best scenario. So when I came back to Puerto Rico, there were clearly shit happening inside of me. And these teachers were like, well, Luis, I want you to know there's a program called Enlace that we're doing this year, and I think you might be a good fit for this. You might want to be in the room and stay in school a little bit longer and have these activities. Little did I know I was going to meet this guy, Jose Rivera, who, you know, was having us do the split in the middle of the garden, in the middle of the school. My pants were coming dirty home every day, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was rewarding, and it made me happy, and it liberated me. And I felt like coming from my mom being sick and my dad's situation, the whole thing, that grounded me. It gave me a space where I discovered more of who I was or who I was out to be, you know, and it connected me with this person that I think I am today. And so it changed my life. And at that moment, it was like, it's like a drug. I don't want to do anything else. I want to do this.
What does that do to you? Like dancing, when you're dancing, what are you feeling? I'm going in for these questions. I'm just so interested. Interested.
This is like that Billy Elliot song, Electricity.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because this morning I was running auditions, and I think a lot about dance because I come as a dancer first, and I escalated to so many different things: producing, directing, you know, choreographing, having a nonprofit organization, whatever. And every now and then I wonder, like, am I gonna keep on dancing? Am I going to keep on choreographing? Right now I'm passionately and madly in love with directing and what that responsibility is, and like talking to people and developing the needs for the story to take life. So I've been talking a lot about when am I not dancing anymore, and do I even need to choreograph, or do I just direct? And this morning I was running this audition, and I was like, guys, to the dancers auditioning, what's going on? Like, I need your heart. I don't just need your shape. I need your heart. Like you need to get involved. Yes, the step needs to be clean, but your heart needs to be there. And then I danced, and I did it full out, and everybody looked at me, and my team was like, don't you ever dare say that you're not going to dance anymore or choreograph. And so it's something that is such a part of who I am. I think movement, it's such a part of who I am, and it's not perfect. It's not that I'm like, I remember when I moved to New York, I used to always say I want to be like Desmond Richardson, you know, like the quality of movement that man has. And now I realize very quickly after that no, I can't not be ever Desmond. I am me. Whatever that is.
Yeah.
And so there's like a rawness and a dirtiness and like a reality to the way I move that's mine, but it's from the heart, you know. And so like Billy Elliot, Electricity, but no, it's not me. I think it's like earth, you know. I think it's like passion and drive and want and my own on her voice.
Yeah. What is there a particular production you've been in or been a part of that has taught you the most about yourself or more about yourself that stands out in your mind as teaching you a lot about yourself?
I think in the Heights, hands down. I always say in the Heights changed my life in so many ways. Before in the Heights, again, I was in New York looking to be everything that I could be, which a lot of times is something outside of you, right? I want to learn more hip hop, or I want to learn more contemporary. I need to be doing ballet. Oh my God, I need to point my foot more. Oh my God, I have a bad foot. Like all of these things that you're just like, what am I? Who am I? I need to be something that's not me. And I guess a certain dissatisfaction with yourself. And when in the Heights happened, it was like, oh, I get to be me. I get to choreograph what that teacher showed me in 5th grade for a Broadway show and help a wonderful choreographer win a Tony for that movement. You're kidding me? Or I get to just get on stage and play the club guy, Jose, as Luis Salgado. You know, like, I get to be me. Just and yourself, it liberated me, and it liberated the way I work and the way I think about how I cast a show even.
Yeah, and I had also read that dance has opened a lot of doors for you.
Yeah.
That's your rock, your thing.
It's my first step, you know. Movement drives the rest of the way I think.
Yeah. I want to talk. I'm curious now about the traveling around the world, because you do a lot of teaching around the world and working on shows and what have you. Did that just come about because of what you've done here? It's like friend of a friend says to you like, hey, we need some help over here, or like you realize that you want to go teach over in that country?
Ironically, no. I started traveling before I even got my first off-Broadway show. So that gives me also a certain satisfaction that it's not because I've done something like in the Heights. I moved to New York in 2002, and I think in 2003 or 2004, I was dancing at Broadway Dance Center, and this Japanese couple came to me and said, hey, we like the way you're dancing in this class. We'll be interested for you to come to Japan. And for me, a Boricua from Puerto Rico, Caribbean islands, to hear you want to, we're inviting you to come to Japan. Japan is like the end of the world for a Puerto Rican. It's like, I'll never get there because that's so far. So like, that was my first trip. That was my first invite. Long story short, as well, the most of the group that was supposed to travel with me didn't make it. So then I became the star of the show. Because, like, I remember that Manwe was going to be in it, Jesus Aponte was going to, and somehow they didn't make it. And so I ended up taking all of the spaces, which means that I had almost all of the numbers, both between having to choreograph some of them and having to learn the original thing that they were doing in Japan. So all of a sudden I'm walking in Ibaraki, in a little island in Japan, and in the where the buses and the things are happening, the transportation, my poster was there. This Boricua's poster is in so it started this adventure of what traveling artistically could be for me as an individual artist. Then I got an industrial in Germany, and then a teacher of mine who passed away, William Wade, used to say to me, Seymour. I was like, who is Seymour? And he's like, no, Seymour. And I was like, oh, okay, you want me to like. And so he inspired me to start traveling to London and seeing theater there. And traveling became part of like how I was continuing to cook my learning habits. Still to this day, I think I posted this morning, guys, I need advice. I want to go to Europe and study there. Tell me, places to go. It's part of how I recharge. And so when I started finally doing more work, like I got my first off-Broadway show or did in the Heights, then there were already doors that I had, but those expanded. And that's what has helped me gone so far in like Latin America and other places.
What do you love most about traveling?
Learning. Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you've learned about other cultures that comes to mind as you've traveled to like Japan? And
yeah, all the time. My son's name is Hikari. Hikari, it's a Japanese name and it means light. So I would have never probably called my son, Hikari, if I didn't value how Japanese culture always works to have meaning on something. I think even my other companies, like Salgado Productions, it's all about making art with a purpose. Like I don't want to just have a name. I want to have a purpose in my name, right? I want to have my son means light. He will forever enlighten my life, right? So like that kind of deep, quote unquote, deep thought. It's part of what I think I take from traveling and every single work I get to do. I always learn from what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Have you found your purpose?
Purpose?
That's a big question.
What's purpose?
I threw that one at you.
I think so. In a weird way, I think my purpose is to do what I love, to do art, to inspire people, to be inspired by people, to mess it up and mess it up again, to doubt myself, to be human.
Yeah. How do you, and we're going to, because we're wrapping up here, so you're gonna, it's going to be.
An hour went by so fast.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah.
I love this. So I'm going to hit you with some bullet point questions here.
Okay.
Rapid fire. Your answers do not have to be rapid fire. First one. How do you deal with rejection?
I avoid it.
You avoid it.
Yeah, like I tell my students how many performers are going to every single audition. And well, of course, if you're going to 20 auditions, you get rejected by 19 because you never chose which one was the one that was good for you. Then you're going to have to deal with rejection. But I try to avoid that, right? I try to pick and choose what I want to go into. And so my agent calls me 19 times and I say probably no to 15 of those. And I choose what the ones I want to go in because they either move me in my spirit or because they feel as a great adventure artistically or because I think, someone might say, yeah, but that's a luxury. It's not. It's something you have to set for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a favorite failure or apparent failure that set you up for success?
Do I have a
favorite failure?
Favorite failure. Such an interesting question. Favorite failure. I guess the time I failed to jump into the water. Right? The whole concept of Revolución Latina is dare to go beyond.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm challenged, a little bit of what I was telling you before we started the interview, I teach this certain way, and I wish I was taking those classes. I wish I was being pushed to my limits that way. And the whole idea of Dare to Go Beyond is as simple as me at the age of, I don't remember now, 13, 14, in this hill by a river in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, and everyone's jumping, and I'm so afraid. Here we go again. And I wanted to jump so bad, but I was scared. And when I finally jumped, I kind of twisted my body and I wanted to grab the rock. But I was like, if I grab this rock, I'm going to die. I'm going to scratch my entire being through rocks. I can't. I got to let go. When I let go, that water was so delicious. It was cold. It was refreshing. It was amazing. And that, in a nutshell, it's the way we work in Revolución Latina. We push ourselves to be on the edge of the stone, having to decide, am I going to jump in the water? And that failure is my favorite failure. Me being afraid so deeply at that moment is the reason why I'm pushing so hard right now.
Gee, what a lesson to learn at 13.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Good. That's a great answer. Is there a common piece of incorrect advice?
Say that one more time.
Is there a common piece of incorrect advice?
Yeah.
You hear in your field or
yeah, the moment that you say, "Oh, I know that."
Okay. Like someone and what do you mean by like someone jumps to
any of us that thinks we know something, that's incorrect advice. Or thinking we know, assuming that what my truth is has to be your truth or that's the answer to your question. I think that is the incorrect advice. Having an answer is the incorrect advice. The curse of the actor is to know.
Yeah.
What we do as actors is we try to forget so that we can relive it fully in every performance.
Yeah.
So I think thinking we know is the incorrect advice. We don't know shit. We ought to discover every day. Thinking we know God is a problem. Thinking God exists is a problem. For me, at least. Right? Like, I don't know. Every morning I have to discover if he still is here, if it's true. And then I go to bed every night with the fulfillment that God exists in my life because I personally discovered it, not because my grandma told me I have to go to church and God exists.
You have to discover it for yourself.
Yeah. So thinking we know
Yeah.
might be the incorrect advice.
Huh. These are good answers. What does success mean to you?
This conversation.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this conversation is success, right? We're successfully having a conversation.
Yeah.
We're inspiring each other. You're inspiring me
time.
with your questions.
Well, thank you.
I hope that I'm contributing something
Yeah.
to you. So the here and now, in this moment where we are sharing a human existence that we didn't have an hour ago, it's success to me.
Will you complete this phrase? I believe.
Completed,
Yeah.
I believe, exclamation point.
Oh my god. I mean, what? Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm like speechless. I want to talk about that.
Uh-huh.
You believe everything. Everything
No.
you choose to believe.
Just like God, right? Like just like the idea of God. Like I believe because I have to explore it. I don't know. I don't know. I might die and realize I was wrong. He's not there. Right? But I don't know. Look, there's the sky, there's the sun, right? There's like water in our bottles. We're blessed. There must be something special going on. I call it God. And so I believe is like, what do I have to lose by believing?
I have a follow-up question. I feel like I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway in case I don't. Do you have a favorite story of life happening for you?
Life happening for me. What does that mean?
As in, so like there's that saying where people are like, oh, life is happening to me. All these bad things are happening to me. It's all happening to me. But life is really happening for you. A bad thing or something not coming your way is simply guiding you towards something you truly deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in particular that stands out in your mind as life happening for you? Because I imagine your answer to me would be like this right now. Everything you've already done, life's happened for you. I'm just curious if there's something maybe.
Don't get me wrong. I get scared, right? Like so often people say like, "Oh, Luis, do you ever get scared?" Like, "Oh, I get scared." I'm like, I have doubts. Like, of course.
Yeah.
The thing is, what do we do with that? So life happening for me, I think I have to listen to life, right? Like life is happening for us, but we're not listening to it often. Often we're not listening to the universe. Like one of my favorite writers is the simpler writer ever. He gets criticized for writing cheaty, Paulo Coelho, because he's so simple. He's so simple.
Yeah.
But then again, you find your own answers in his simple work, and that's what makes him so profound, right? So the intellectual literacy writer is saying Paulo Coelho is not a writer. Does that make sense?
That makes a whole lot of sense.
And so, one of the things that in The Alchemist he will say is maktub, right?
Yeah,
It's written. And I have a problem with destiny. Like I just did a show recently that, or actually I'm doing a show in Colombia that we're developing that has a topic of destiny. And I question the writer so much on the idea of destiny, but not because I don't believe in destiny, but more so because we have to define what destiny really is. Does that mean that only a being outside of me has control over my life and I have to admit, blah, 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 and be that Greek shit that we all grew up with, right? The Oedipus or whatever. Or is it that I have a conversation with destiny, and you and I, destiny and I, are negotiating the outcome that we are both going to build. Does that make sense? And so, life happening for me, it's also me working with life.
Yeah.
I'm working with life. It's as simple as I have to listen to life.
Yeah.
And there might be the day where I'm doing way too much, and I have to say to myself, I'm doing way too much. Today I have to stay home and sleep. But you have to listen to the universe, and in the universe, your body and everything, in order to define that, to find that, to use that, to take in that, and do something about it. And I think that would be my answer. That life happens for me every day, yes, but only because life itself is challenging me to listen to it.
Life is challenging me to listen to it. That's good. How have you gotten comfortable with not knowing the answers in your life?
Stop being so paranoid about having the answers.
Just let go.
Yeah. Well, it's just like that jump.
Yeah.
If I jump, am I going to die? Am I jump? Am I gonna hurt myself? I'm not gonna be able to dance.
Yeah.
I don't know. Water is cold. It's refreshing. Oh my God, feels so good. Right? There's a moment where we just, it's not easy. It's not easy. It might feel like I'm just talking shit, but you have to let go. Because I don't know that I'm gonna be alive tomorrow. So if I don't give you everything right now, this moment was wasted. You know, so you have to let go.
I love that. What's morning look like for you? How do you start your day?
It depends on my wife's mood.
Okay.
Often I wake up early. I'm a very early person, so I can wake up at 6:37, and she sleeps late. So that means that I get to have like an hour and a half, 2 hours for me before we start fighting over coffee or whatever. So if I use that time well, morning for me, I mean, these days is sad because, you know, we're so addicted to social media that all of a sudden you can so easily turn into your phone, look at something and waste the first hour of your life there. And again, trying to make habits that I have always had and that we often lose. So the last week, let me talk about the last week's morning. I've been putting a lot of music. So I'm waking up and I'm putting music right away, and I'm letting music sort of like.
What kind?
So I'll show you. So
Great.
You know that I'm not lying.
So we know you're not lying. I love that.
For example, I was in Colombia. I got back 2 weeks ago. And in Colombia, I started having these conversations about old school music that I, again, had in my life at some point, but stopped listening to. And it's called, the playlist is called, you're going to read it for me in Spanish. Well, this is the morning meditations, right?
Yeah.
And then there's, but the one I'm looking for you is this one. What it says there.
Palabras para el vivir.
Yeah, palabras para el vivir. Good
Oh,
job.
thank you.
Words for living, or words to live by. And so, like, titles. I just give you the titles. Soy un ser humano. I'm a human being. Desiderata, which you probably know.
These are songs, not people speaking.
These are songs and or people speaking.
Okay.
No sabes cuánto te quiero. You don't know how much I love you. El pescador, which is a beautiful song about a fisherman.
Where do you find these?
In iTunes.
Okay.
Todo cambia. Everything changes. Nada tengo que cuidar y todo para vivir. Nothing I have to take care of, and I have everything to live with. So then this is my playlist. So then I'm making my coffee to this music now, and it's like, hey, it feels so good. Yeah. And again, you forget and you lose that. You lose those moments and you get busy or whatever. And then I think you have to listen to the universe and be like, okay, what do I have to do now to be able to recharge? Yeah. And again, because of the social work we end up doing, or because of the amount of stories you end up listening to, it gets really dense, really fast. So I've learned that I need a way of decompressing that recharges me, and I find a lot of those answers in music.
Do you have books that you refer to, or like texts you refer to daily?
Yeah,
or?
There's a lot. Speeches. You know, like one of my greatest speech to live by is The Great Dictator. That's why I laugh when I say greatest. The Great Dictator by Charlie Chaplin. You know the speech? No. He starts saying, I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I would like to help everyone if possible, Jew, Gentile, black men, white. We all want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's miseries. Human beings are like that. You know, it's like it's like one of the greatest speech, and it was created and spoken by a mime man who wasn't supposed to ever talk. And it's you know, so speeches like that inspire me. The eternal, to be or not to be. Yeah. You know, it's like that's a daily thing in anything you do.
That was incredible. And going back to Be or Not to Be, the show we saw, this must have been like a month ago now. I know what to be or not to be. That is the question. I know that, but you really there's like that meaning, you know, there's that superficial kind of meaning, like show up for your life, take that jump, let it go. And then there's that actual thing you feel that's tangible when you say, let go, jump, to be or not. It's like, whoa. Blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind.
It's so interesting to do that with, again, half of a group that doesn't speak English in the first place. They have everything to lose.
Yeah.
To be or not to be.
Yeah.
You know, and in that dilemma of like, isn't it Revolución Latina Latina? Isn't it Revolución Latina something that should be speaking Spanish for me? Shouldn't you be helping me with my own language? And I'm saying, as the Latino from Puerto Rico, no. I'm going to be the guy saying, speak English, you're in America now. So that you really know what that feels like before you go to the streets and somebody really says it to you. Now, how are you going to deal with that? So we are responsible to speak the English and the Spanish and anything we can, because they're going to look down at us, and we got to be ready for something. And so they feel in a very safe environment being pushed to their limits.
Yeah.
And so to be or not to be for them is anything at this moment is to be a person who can speak English or not to be a person who can speak English. And alone, that's a basic example.
Are you going to act or you're not going to act?
Are you going to act or are you going to live? You know what I mean? Like it's like anything.
Yeah.
That speech is like I don't know. They say Shakespeare was Cervantes. You know, they were both born and they both died the same day. Do you know that? Miguel de Cervantes and Shakespeare both were born and died on the same day.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is there a most gifted book that you've like gifted?
The Alchemist.
The Alchemist. It's a good book.
It's such a good book.
Oh, it's a good book. I'm reading it. I'm in the middle of reading it for my third time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's like the one. That's one that you like keep on the shelf. You can go back to.
I don't know at this point how many times I've read it. It's just like probably like 6 or 7. Like it's just such a good book. And it's almost like you can open it in any page and get something from it.
Instantly. You can literally
instantly.
just open it up. Okay, we're coming down to the end here. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to do a part 2. We will. What are you working on right now? Is there anything we could talk about that's coming up?
Yeah.
Things we can see.
When is this airing again?
About a month.
A month from now.
Yeah.
Great. So we are yes. So I am working on a piece in Colombia called Ella es Colombia, which is a spiritual journey. It's basically the hero's journey in this female character who was born out of the kiss of the moon and the water. And so she became I don't know even if to say a human being, because I don't know if to say a human being, but she became and finds that the world is killing itself in many different ways. And so it's a little bit of a way or a device to talk about some of the political situations that have happened in recent years in Colombia. I don't know if you're aware of the peace movement that has taken place. So long story short, by the time that Pablo Escobar was dealing with drugs in the cartel and whatnot, you know, kids were being put into these revolutions and whatnot and given access to drugs or weapons and whatnot, and families were getting houses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then, you know, Escobar is no longer alive and the whole cartel has come down and whatnot. But a lot of the people that work at that time had a little bit of a debate with the government because they weren't, there was a request to give them forgiveness and to access like a common piece from what the history of Colombia was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of division and segregation of perspectives, politically, economically, socially, again, by race, you know, in every other part of the world. And so I feel like the Colombian community, it's in a way just like in the United States, segregated by these realities. And so in the story, without touching or talking directly on any of these topics, we're kind of talking about all of these topics. And so there's a division of 4 corners of the land, and this woman, her name is Aluna, takes a journey that helps her sort of find the answers to how to unite those communities. Long story short, that's what we're working on. And we're in the middle of developing the work and whatnot.
You're developing it here?
Well, I went to Colombia for 10 days. We did casting. We worked on the book. We worked on music. I left sort of like homework, you know, happening. Yeah. I have a meeting today at 6 furthering that with them. Yeah. And then I go back in June and I start building the show. And I do 3 weeks of building a show. And I leave them with that work. And then I go back in August and finish it. So it's a process, and it's beautiful. and it's filled with technology. We're also making a commentary on how technology can be distracting or a way of furthering expressing your inner emotions.
Yeah.
So we're using like LED projections, mapping projections, holo projections. It's very, very interactive.
Wow, that's incredible. Luis Salgado.
Thank you for having me.
I love you. I love
Thank
talking
you.
to you. Where can we find you?
Here.
Where's the best place to find you? You're right.
Sorry.
Here in this moment now.
Twitter, it's El Salgado Art, and Facebook is Luis Salgado, and Instagram is Salgado Prods, which is my other company. You can also follow Revolucion Latina in all of the above.
I love it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners before we say goodbye?
I just want to say thank you. This was fun. You know, it gets so like an interview can easily be so, you know, and this was like life. This is like, thank you for the challenge.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Luis Salgado.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Entertainment X, the podcast. You can follow Entertainment X on Instagram at _EntertainmentX_. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join Clay next week for another curiosity conversation on Entertainment X. Thank you for listening.